I wanted to make this video to demonstrate the highly damaging consequences of the chemical revolution. I'm out here in my garden and I've just discovered that I have herbicide poisoning in my organic garden, and I wanted to make a video to share this with people, especially my gardening friends, but everyone in general, because I just wanted to spread some awareness about the consequences of indiscriminately spraying herbicides in yards, farms, etc. So the worst of the damage is actually over at my other garden, which I'll go to in a minute. But from doing some research, I've discovered that the cause of my plant damage is an herbicide known as aminopyralid. And if you search aminopyralids online, you'll find lots of organic gardeners are importing this herbicide, which is a persistent herbicide, which doesn't go away anytime soon. They're importing it on straw, hay, even manures, because the hay that's fed to cows and horses passes, the herbicide passes through them and lingers in the grass for years, multiple years. It doesn't just go away anytime soon. So now I have to consider how I'm going to remediate this problem, and there's no real simple, easy way to do it. But first, I'm trying to assess the extent of the damage and the cause of the damage. So one way to remediate it, or I guess one way to test if you have it, is to plant peas and beans. So I planted kind of peas and beans throughout all my garden beds because they'll show the damage the fastest. So I've planted a bunch of peas and beans in my raised beds and over at my other garden across the street. So I should hopefully in a few weeks know the extent of the damage. I'm hoping it's just localized in a few spots. So depending on how extensive the damage is going to determine the course of action that I take. If it's real extensive, I mean, I may have to plant some sort of grass crop in all of my garden beds, because grass crops are not affected by this herbicide. The grass crop will pull up the herbicide. I'll have to cut it all and remove all that grass and just get it the hell out of here. That seems to be the way to deal with it. If it's just localized, I might just take a shovel and dig out the areas that are affected. Either way, it amounts to lost production, it amounts to wasted time. I mean, it just, it saddens me that the whole freaking world is just poisoned. You try to grow safe food, you got to bring in mulches and fertilizers, and you can't even just indiscriminately use any grass or hay or straw. Now you have to be careful of what you're getting. It's just really sad, I mean, a person gets into this because they want to grow safe food, healthy food that's, not sprayed with poisons. But stupid me, I guess I got some grass clippings or some, I go to the Yardways site and I get grass clippings there, which, I mean, yeah, it's a little risky, I guess, and I knew it was maybe a little risky, but I guess I underestimated the risk. So I go to the Yardways site and get grass clippings there because our yard doesn't really produce much grass. And I think I either brought it in on some grass clippings I got there, or actually I was thinking about it, and I think I actually got some grass clippings from a ditch. Like the ditch had been mowed and there were like huge piles of grass clippings. So this was like 2 years ago, when I was just getting my garden started before I knew any better. But I think the ditch had been mowed and then sprayed, and then I brought that in and composted it, and that seems to be probably the most likely place, because this particular herbicide, the aminopyralids, are not really widely used in lawns. They're more used in like road ditches and hay fields and that kind of thing. But I guess I'll never know. Point is, even if you import commercial manures and straws and hays, it can still be in there. So let me just show you the damage. The damage is fairly minor here so far. I'm guessing it's only going to get worse. But I got these really nice tomato plants, and here's some damage on my pepper. It's a pretty distinct looking damage. The leaves are starting to kind of curl and twist. This is fairly minor, but this is a little more indicative here on my tomato plant. The stem is just curling and twisting back toward itself, and there's maybe a little bit of that up here. It's a little harder to tell up here. I'm not super worried about it yet up here, but here's another one that's curling in on itself. And I'll show you, but I'm guessing as these plants grow, their roots will spread out and they'll find wherever it is, because it seems to be somewhere in this area here. This plant is affected, this tomato is affected, so this I might be able to just dig out here to get rid of. The rest of the plants are looking pretty good otherwise. I did notice some possible contamination over here, although that could be other things. It's not quite as apparent. This is some weed that's growing in here that might be showing me the same thing. But I did plant some peas and beans in here because it's a little bit easier to tell, and they're fast growing, so you can use it as a indicator species. So that's not even the worst of it. The worst of it is at my other garden, but I also had really terrible germination on my carrots this year, and that may possibly be due to that contamination as well, because I had this really nice black compost, or so I thought, and that's where I believe my contamination came from. And I put it everywhere because it was really nice black rich compost. But so I planted some peas and beans in here. I can't really tell so much with the carrots, but one of the side effects is poor germination in carrots, and I had poor germination, although I think that was caused by bad seed. I think I had bad seed, because you can see one row came up and my other rows didn't come up, so I had to reseed them. But that remains to be seen if the contamination is in there. But I'll walk over to my other garden, and I'll show you where the damage is the worst on my tomato plants. But basically it's a pretty easy to identify problem. Lots of people are having this problem. And like I said, I mean, I put this compost everywhere, and I'm not seeing problems everywhere yet, but it's possible that as the roots spread out, they may find more of it. But this is the most indicative sign on my tomato plant here. The leaves are just curled and twisted back in on themselves. So this tomato plant is pretty well shot. You can see the younger leaves weren't affected, but as the plant grew, the roots spread out, pulled up wherever the poisons were. This is really typical of what it looks like. You can see this bean plant next to it. This is also an indication to me that somewhere in here we have some contamination. However, the peas don't look too bad, so you know, there's a few spots on the peas I'm seeing, but it looks fairly minor. But this tomato plant, that one's garbage. This one here has kind of similar, not so much twisting, but just kind of leathery. It's not looking right. For some reason, this plant here, I have four tomatoes next to each other. This one is doing totally fine. So this one hasn't found any of it yet, but it looks like this bean plant down here is finding the contamination. I got one more tomato here, which is doing the same thing. You can see this leaf here at the top, how it's like starting to curl back on itself, and how these are twisted. So, I mean, I got beans all underneath here, and I won't really know until they put out these new leaves if these are all bad. I recall putting a whole bunch of grass clippings in here last year, and I didn't really notice any problems last year with the stuff that grew here, but I wouldn't have really paid much attention to it. So my carrot germination was extremely bad in this bed. This bed is just junk. I planted a bunch of peas and beans in here to hopefully try to figure out if this is all contaminated. My potato plants are doing okay so far. I only noticed a couple little spots here. See, it looks like the potato is starting to find, because I put that same compost on here too. So it looks like this potato plant is starting to find that stuff. Can't really tell if it's just new growth or, but this is pretty indicative of what it looks like. The leaves start to curl like that. So, you know, I mean, I put that compost everywhere. I mean, everywhere. And one of the symptoms was poor carrot germination. The leaves are the most indicative piece. So again, this is a massive pain in my ass. And it's just gonna cause me more work than the garden already has been. Parsnips look great because I didn't put any of that. See, the parsnips came up quick. The parsnips look great. I didn't think I put any of that compost on the parsnip bed. So, yeah, not real pleased. My main point here, guys, is if you or someone you know is just indiscriminately spraying these weed killers, I mean, it's just, this is the effect. This is the effect. You know, I see when I drive through Alexandria, I mean, people are spraying Roundup on all kinds of trees, fence lines. I mean, it's just sad. It's sad. It's causing me a lot of work. causing a lot of problems. But on the positive side, it looks like we're going to have an enormous amount of raspberries this year. Anyway, I won't keep you going any longer, but yeah, this bed is, who knows, probably total garbage. That good black compost I thought I was putting on here killed all my stuff. And well, my squash is looking good so far, but I suppose as soon as the squash roots find that stuff, which I did, so the plant roots are growing down, and I didn't put the contaminated stuff down. I put the contaminated stuff on top because it was not fully broken down yet. So I'm guessing once those roots, some of those, you know, lateral roots find that compost, I'm guessing I'm gonna have problems here too, but we'll see. Be safe out there, guys. Be sure you know where you're getting your food and where you're getting your freaking compost.